Hi, Lynn. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm very well, and can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you
Okay,
perfectly
good.
well.
I can hear
How's your
you.
evening?
It's been good. I had to rush over here though because of load shedding, so I made an effort.
You look good. You
Thank
look
you.
good, which is great. So it means that you were not rushing too much.
No,
I'm
I
happy.
made sure that I came here and settled down, and load shedding is ruling our lives, eh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, let's get on it. I know we don't have a lot of time to
Sure.
speak about this important discussion. And, I'm very excited to be speaking about it. Firstly, because you speak about it very openly. You are part of a blended family, and I am from a blended family as well. So it is a topic that
I
is
agree.
very close to my heart, right? And, when I was just thinking about it, and the difference between you and I is that you are, the granny, you are, an older part of the family, where with me, it was by virtue of my parents getting married, then automatically I was part of a blended family. So in
Okay.
this discussion, I really want us to speak about, both ends. Children seeing or finding themselves in a blended family, and how the parents and the older people within the families actually get to navigate around, being a part of a blended family.
Yes.
And maybe as a start, we can start by defining what a blended family is, and then maybe you can tell us about your experience and your relationships within a blended family. I know that it's not very fresh, this blended family thing. It started way back with your mom, and then it went on and on as you progress with life. And maybe you can, just define what it means for you to be
Yeah.
part of a blended family, and also your experience about
Okay.
blended family.
Yes. Let's start maybe with a definition. And for me, you see, I think my definition of what a blended family is maybe not what people normally see a blended family to be. So for me, I prefer not to even use the word blended and just to drop the label completely and work with just the word family, because that is then how it makes sense for me, because the moment you bring in labels, you act according to the labels. So the moment you say blended, you bring in step and you bring in half and you bring in all of those other things that then kind of automatically in your mind comes across as we are not normal. All right.
Mm.
Now I want a normal family. So coming back to my mom then, so for me, a blended family is a family that was just created differently.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no blended, it's just a family that was created differently, right?
So,
So
so Shema,
that's my definition. That's my definition of a blended family. And I feel like maybe the one of the reasons later on we can talk about why I believe a blended family works well is if you start on that premise that it's just a family.
mm,
And the word blended kind of already brings you into a place where you think about it differently. So
mm,
coming back to my mom, so I didn't grow up within a blended family. I grew up in a household where there were six siblings with the same mom and dad, and my mom and dad were married until my dad passed away
mm,
only 2 years ago. So we didn't grow up within a blended family, but where I learned the, you know, how, or my first introduction maybe to something that was different is when there was marriages, when we all started getting married, and it was the way in which my mother responded to or treated or introduced those new people into our family. So the new husbands and new wives, they were never seen as in-laws. We
mm,
never operated on the understanding of in-laws. The moment you get married, you are children. My
mm,
mom treated everybody as children. So if I get married, that's my child now, and there's no in-laws, right? There were in-laws, but my mom didn't treat it as in-laws. And then when you got divorced, I was the only person that ever got divorced in our family. And my mom would say to me very clearly, you got divorced, I'm not getting divorced, because I have a child. So when you marry that person became my child. If you now divorce him, you can't expect me to divorce my child. And that is how that's my I grew up, and that is how I understood a family to be. You don't come in and then you get excluded in any way. So in my own family, that is how I operated. For me, it's about whether you're a girlfriend or wife or whatever. As long as you become part of this family, you find your own space in this family, and you're part of the family. There's no these are my own children and those are not my own children, and you're not a girl, you're not a wife, so you can't do this. You are just part of the family, and you get your space, you operate in that space.
Sure. And as you're speaking, you make it sound as though the term blood is thicker than water does not exist in your vocabulary. Like, if you are coming into my family, then you are my child. And the foundation has already been built there from your mom. And now you are bringing into the next generation as well, which I think is very beautiful, because there's a lot of challenges, Lynn, to be honest, in blended families where, different individuals come together, but there's different belief system, there's different value propositions, and there's a lot of dynamics there. And I think it is inevitable for challenges to come. And I want to know how you manage these challenges.
Okay, so again, let's think about it not as a blended family. So in normal families, there are challenges. You see, that is, for me, it's the whole thing. A family that's not blended is a challenging family. There is no such thing as fairy tale families. Families are not fairy tales. Whether you blend it or whatever kind of composition that family, or however that family exists, you are, your family. Now, but I do understand what you're saying. For me, it's about understanding. Firstly, I think the challenges come in, I think, from insecurities. So if you think about blended families will be either there is somebody, let's take my family. You've got, somebody like a Zintle, for instance, who has a child with Kenan, then Kenan has a girlfriend, Nadia. So there's overlap somewhere but at some point that person was in love with me, and, all of that kind of things. So it comes down to insecurity within individuals, within the family. Now that's inevitable, right? Right? But it's about how you navigate it as a family, and understanding that for me as a mother, everybody understands that they have their own space. Nobody, and remember, nobody is better than the other person, but also there's the understanding from me, and I think it's modeling and being consistent with it, is saying that obviously, if, families are relationships. There are different people with different personalities, different backgrounds, different cultures, different upbringings, and all of that. So you have to respect each person as an individual, and you have to accept each person as an individual, and you cannot change people. You need to let them be who they are, and you have to accept them as they are. But what you have to do is also understand that if somebody okay, I'm going to use my family as an example. So there's Zintle and I have had a relationship for many years, and she is my child. That's how I see it. Nadia comes now. Now, it cannot be exactly the same to start off with. If you think about a romantic relationship, for instance, relationships develop over time, right? You can't just arrive in the family and tomorrow it's the same as somebody that's been there. It's a relationship that has to develop over time. But the most important thing is to make sure that that person understands that even if I arrived yesterday, I have my place, and my place is as special as the other person's place. So everybody that comes into my life understand that I have a space for them. But now I'm not saying it's without difficulties, because it also depends on the person coming in and what their level of security is, and what their level of, what is it that they personally are dealing with. Because if you're not emotionally mature to understand the dynamic and understand that really all you have to do is step into your light. All you have to do is step into your spot and fill your space. But there's space for everybody. And that might take time sometimes. And therefore I'm saying it's not without difficulty. It's not a fairy tale. I don't know if this makes sense. This is very different. People really struggle for a long time to get used to how our family operates.
Yeah. And, as you're speaking, that's exactly what I'm thinking, that this is difficult. You mentioned something around emotional maturity.
Yeah.
When, let's say, for example, now it's a dynamic of bringing children. I get married, for example, I've got my own kids, my husband has got their own kids. I can't really expect kids to have that amount of emotional maturity to be able to understand that they've got their own space in my life versus my own kids. And I'm just wondering, in that particular scenario, how would you say we can navigate around the issues of insecurities? Because they are there.
Yeah.
They are there on the parent side, they are there on the children's side. There's always wonder, will you love me like you love your own kids? And we also even see that even with reprimanding the children, it's always very scary to reprimand the other child, because you're scared, am I ruining this relationship? And then if you don't reprimand them and then you reprimand your own kids, it's also an issue. So how do we then, I'm looking for the foundation, because everything starts there. I'm looking for the foundation of formulating these relationships, building this relationship, so that we can eliminate some of the challenges that come with insecurities.
Yes. Okay, firstly, so from my point of view, there are a few things we need to look at. And again, we need to look at what are the pillars of relationships, firstly, because all of this whole blended family and all its parts and bits of it, each of it is a relationship, whether it's a parent-child relationship or a partner relationship. A family consists of relationships, and then you need to look at, or in my opinion, you need to make sure that the pillars of the relationship is solid and strong. And those pillars will be honesty and trust, right? There's respect within that, and there's loyalty. So, and those are things you build within a family. Now, if you cannot get that going, which also might take time because it's new and it's playing around with different dynamics. But at the end of the day, we also have to remember, for me, I always say the children, for me in a blended family as the grandmother, the children are my main focus. But if you're talking couples or, are marrying somebody else with children, understand that children can be very manipulative. We need to also put ground rules and boundaries in place in terms of how the children navigate this, because children can very quickly know when they can play parents up against each other. And that's when it becomes a problem. So I think if it's a new couple and you come in with your children and your husband or partner comes in with their children, you need to be unified. The adults must be unified. And the adults must set the rules, and the adults must set the boundaries. And the children, all they need to know is that we love you and that we are here for you and that we have your best interest at heart. But once you allow the children to manipulate the situation, the cracks will start appearing. Does that kind of answer your question? And that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion.
I think it's a very important point that you're making, because when you look at it, the parents are the foundation of the entire relationship. Exactly. So if the parents are then divided, then the kids will easily manipulate the parents. But if they stay together like this, then it makes it harder for the kids to manipulate, but they all feel like they're equally loved by both parents.
And that's now we're talking about, obviously there's more than one home as well now, because there might be a situation like in our situation where, so what we did just discuss was this core family here now, but now there might also be the other parent that got divorced here might now have married over there, and there's a new home over there. And I think the same thing applies. It's about, if we want to make blended families work, we need to come across as a unified front. The blended families are a collaboration. It's not a competition. We need to think of it as a collaboration. So what happens, and it can't always be the same, so you need to talk. There needs to be communication in this collaboration. There needs to be an understanding that there are boundaries for the children, there are rules for the children that has to kind of, you need to try, and it's not always possible that it's that it's the same at this home and at that home. Bedtime is 8 o'clock and bedtime is 8 o'clock.
Collaboration. That takes a lot of collaboration. Because it means you have to have a meeting with the other parents, you know, the exes. You have to have a meeting with the other grandparents because the kids will go to the grandparents' house.
It has to be an understanding. But I think it's not, you see, I think we make it more complicated than what it is. It is, again, it is about, I think it becomes difficult when people are like, no, these are my rules. You know, I think we as human beings want to become, you know, it's ego. We have egos about these things. And when you decide, you know what is in the best interest of these children that have to live alternative weeks, alternate weekends at different homes, how do we make life easy for them? How do we make it easy for them that when they come home from Glammy's house, from daddy's house and come back to mommy, that it wasn't a competition that daddy now wants to show this house is better than mommy's house, and that here you can get away with X, Y, Z, and there, you know, you creating an unstable environment for the children. If you are come across as unified and you come with the same rules and the same boundaries and the same whatever, and again, I'm going to say it's not a fairy tale because it can't always work 100% like that. There will be disagreements. There will be all of that, just like in a normal family. Normal families are not fairy tales either. So and if we understand that this is just a different family, but it's still a family, we'll be fine.
And I think going back to your initial point where you mentioned emotional maturity, for that to happen, it takes a lot of maturity from all the adults within the family. Yeah. You know, it brings me to my next point, the issue of identity, Lynn. Yes. You know, I've realized that and I'm trying not to use the word blended family, but in family.
It is a blended family. For the purpose of this conversation, let's use the word blended family.
Thank you. But I've also, you know, and looking back to my experience, as I said, I come from a blended family, that there could be issues of identity where one child doesn't feel like, you know, they've got an identity, or there's a confusion with regards to identity because, you know, they might have like 2 dads or 2 moms, 4 grandparents, or even more. You know, how do we just navigate the issue of identity? Because in my view, your identity is who you are and how we all raise you to become, right?
So I can only speak of one experience. The only child, again, I'm going to use my own experiences because we only have one child, and that child is Cairo, right? Now, there's no identity crisis at all. We talk about the 8-year-old. Now, and I'll tell you, because I think it's what you model to children and what you accept and what you respect. So Cairo understands on her mom's side the cultural background, the differences. She embraces that, and we, even on our side of the family, we embrace that. We talk to her, even on our side of the family, we talk to her about her Zulu heritage. I mean, she will tell you, you know, she will say, if I go home, you know, Gogo Jabu, Zinle's mom will do X, Y, Z, and I'll be interested. Explain to me how that works and why is that like that? She says, because that's our culture. Because that's our culture. So, and then on my side, I mean, we don't have all of that. And then we kind of, you know, she will say, but at Glammy's house or at Daddy's house, we do things this way. And that's, for her, there is no issue of I am struggling because there is no tug of war between the two families about what the culture is and where she belongs. When she comes home, mommy is okay with embracing whatever she has to do at daddy's house, and daddy's okay, or, well, daddy's not there anymore, but you know what I mean. So the two families do not clash over culture and over traditions and over the way we do things. If Cairo has to do something on this side of the family, the other side of the family doesn't ridicule that. We don't make, oh, that's a problem. Well, how could they do that? No, we understand that and we embrace that and we explain that to her, and she finds the middle ground. You know, I always tell the story because I thought it was the most beautiful thing. A teacher phoned me one day and she said, we spoke about families at school, and the question was, and it went around the classroom, well, what do you love most about your family? And she says, what I like most about my family is they all love me. And I have, that's what I love most about my family. Everybody loves each other. And she likes this idea of knowing that I have and now, I mean, Nadia also steps into, because now Nadia Caro even goes spends time with Nadia at her house. She wants to go, Mommy, I want to go to Nadia. And Mommy's like, okay, cool, let's call Nadia. Let you go to Nadia for the weekend if you want to go to Nadia. It creates a safe space for the child where she doesn't feel like, oh my word, if I say to Mommy, I want to go and spend some time with Nadia, Mommy's upset. And, you know, there's none of that. And it really comes down to really being secure in yourself. Now, again, I'm going to always say to you, it doesn't mean it's always without, there's always going to be hiccups in all situations because we're human beings. But as a family, you work through it and you sort it out. What is the bottom line is that the children feel secure and safe in that situation. So I think that children don't have an identity issue. Adults create the issue for them. We
Agreed.
are responsible. As adults, we are responsible for everything our children experience. So children are not the problem. Children are not in crisis. Adults are.
And I think when we start to shift from the mindset that this is about us as the adult and think it's not about us, it's about the children that we are bringing into this blended family, then we start to think differently. That emotional maturity starts to kick in, because the reality and, you know, the truth of the matter is that almost the majority of the issues that we face in blended families in relation to the children is because of exactly what you're saying, insecurities and a lack of emotional maturity, because we're human beings, we will be jealous. Because we're human beings, we want to feel like we're superior, we want to feel like we're seen. Our egos also just strikes in there as well. So that also plays a huge factor. So if you start to understand that it's not about you, you know, it's about
but let me just, I agree, yes, and that is what I'm saying. But just remember, there also is the important thing. I do believe that it has to be, we need to focus on the children, but when it comes to a couple, like I said earlier on, it can't be about the children first. You need to put your relationship first and understand that the children have to work and come into that. You cannot put your husband or your wife or your partner on the back burner and let the children rule. I'm saying the children must be important, but you two have to be there for each other, and you two have to set the foundation, set the rules, set the boundaries, and even in that situation, the children will feel more secure. Children that run around ruling a household creates havoc. Children cannot rule the household.
Yeah. Children cannot rule the household, right? But what if there's always conflict between my partner and my little one? And it's getting
There's conflict between your partner and, how old is your little one? Let's give it
maybe my 12, 14, let's say 14, teenager.
So what kind of conflict are we talking? I'm just trying to think, because I'm trying to think, and I understand. Listen, so teenagers, when you say there's conflict between your partner and your teenager, they would, but isn't that a normal thing? You see, you're seeing your partner as not the child's parent.
Yes. So the mentality as well.
It's in here. If the parent, is your partner a parent to the child or not? That's how we need to look at it. If we see our partner as something outside of me and my child's situation, then there's going to be conflict, because I feel like my children were teenagers. I'm the actual mother, but we had conflict. So why wasn't that a problem? You just work through the conflict. But if you are taking the stance of saying, oh, that's my child, you can't reprimand my child, or oh, you're a little bit too harsh with my child, or whatever, then the problem is not your partner and your child, it's you.
Oh no. You are Glammy. I can't believe this. What you're saying is just so important, right? I'm just amazed at the mental shift, right? Because even as I speak, I keep thinking step parent, but we actually have to move away from step parents, because even the word, we have to move away from it, because they are your children, right? And
That's
when
why
you
I
see them
started
as
out. Exactly. That's why I started out with that line and said, the moment we take the labels away and just say family, because, I've seen, situations where, and I'm not even talking about my family, I'm talking about where the other person, who's now not the biological parent, is really trying hard to parent that child. But the biological parent is very sensitive. Because, and you have to decide and say, well, do I want to give this person the platform to be a parent? Look, obviously, if the person is abusing your child, it's a completely different story. But if the person is just exercising their parental rights, because you married them and you're with them and you want them to now co-parent. And also, again, remember, co-parenting is also a collaboration. We need to work with collaborations, yeah.
And just yes, you can. Sorry.
No, you go on. Yeah.
No, I wanted to move to another question, but you can just wrap up that.
No, I'm done.
Okay.
Done. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. So I just want, because of time, there's so much I want to speak about, but I want you to almost give a word of wisdom to any couple or anyone who says, I want to start a blended family, or I'm considering getting into a blended family. What are some of the things that they have to consider, and what should they always keep in mind?
There can't be just one thing. They firstly have to understand it's not a fairy tale. There are no fairy tales. Fairy tales are in books, right? And the second thing, I think that for me, it is exactly what I said to you. Don't think I want to get into a blended family. Don't think I want to get into a blended family. Think I want to create a family.
Yeah.
A family, not a blended family. And that family, you see, the moment we think a blended family, we think it has to operate differently, because it's a different thing. It's different, and therefore we're going to approach it differently. Just, if you fall in love with somebody that has children and you want to marry them, then come together and create a family. A family. That's the only advice we can give.
Full stop. A family. Right? A family. This is a conversation that has been going on for years, but not deep enough, not clear enough, not truthful enough. And it's the first time I'm having this conversation, and we are taking it in this angle. There's always how to discipline your stepchild, how to speak to your stepmom, how to, and when you now saying this is just a family, it's a normal family. It's just relax about it. Don't overcomplicate it.
It's a family. It's still a family. It's a family. Let me say it like this. It's still a family in every sense of the word. It's just a family that's been created differently from what we used to. And also remember that what we used to is kind of going out the window. There are not many more. It's not really the norm anymore. So this new normal is just a family.
Yeah.
So let's embrace the family. Embrace the family.
Yeah. I must say, Glammy, you got a big heart, right? Emotional maturity, yes, but also a big heart. And I think in order for one to embrace this the way that you see it, that element also needs to come in, understanding, but also an open, big heart, so that you're able to welcome the other members of the family as well.
I do agree with you. And I think those, if we talk about challenges, I think that's probably more. So what the conversation we had now is saying, you know, if all of that is in place, it's really not that difficult to have a beautiful family in any form whatsoever, because it comes from a place of love. That's all. That's where it comes from. But if we have the individuals, it's the individuals within the situation that creates the issues. Because I said to you, it's ego, it's I need to be in control, it has to be my way, it has to be this, that, the other. Whereas you just need to look at a bunch of people in a basket and say, all of this is apples in a basket and they're all different.
Yes.
I can't treat them all the same way. We need to embrace their personalities and their differences and work with that within the situation. But that might sound very simplified to many people. For me, it's not, because that is just where I operate from. But I understand that it's not always the same for everybody. I can't help with everybody else. Everybody else must get their own. Each person in the unit has to sort themselves out.
Yes. I get
but it's
you.
not difficult
And I don't,
once you get there.
right? I agree. And, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to get deeper into this, because we are going to have an extended session on exactly this, a more in-depth session on exactly this on the 30th of May in the Panda Forest. And Lynn is going to be there with our clinical psychologist, Zamombele. It's going to be fire. It's going to be epic. It's going to be lovely. So please do join and download the Panda app right now. And remember to use the promo code Glammy times Panda, so that you can get free sessions where you speak to a counselor on chat and you can get the support that you need. Thank you so much, Glammy. It has been
great. I mean, I love the hearts. You know, I'm a heart person. Look at all the hearts just fluttering. Thank you, guys.
So many.
I can't wait to see you in the forest.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye, everyone, and thank you so much. Bye-bye.